All right, I know we have a couple of folks who joined early. I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar today. Obviously, we're about a minute or so early, and so we'll give folks a little bit of time to join in. I know that everyone's quite busy. You've likely got back-to-back meetings. If you haven't had a chance to do so yet, we do have the QR code for the report up on the screen. So you do still have some time to go in, download the report, skim through it and see if you have any questions off the top of your head. We do want to make sure that we try and address as many of these questions over the course of the webinar as possible. So I do encourage you all take a look at the report if you haven't had a chance to do so. And keep in mind that we do have our Q&A widget for the webinar. We'll have that open throughout the course of the webinar. We'll keep an eye on it. But yeah, we'll wait for another minute or so for folks to file in. And at the 1 minute after the hour mark, we'll go ahead and we'll get started. Letty, Daria, you guys pumped up for the webinar? I think this is the first one that we've done with both of you, right?
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. Super excited to be here.
very
Awesome.
excited and hyped.
We're pretty excited too. All right. I know that we have some folks who may be joining from LinkedIn as well. I do want to give you all a heads up that there's roughly a 30-second delay. So if you have any questions or any feedback, any comments or anything like that, unfortunately, I won't be able to address them in real time. But if you do have specific questions, do pop them into the chat there and we'll try our best to answer them at the end of the webinar. So now that we're at the 1 minute after the hour mark, we'll go ahead and we'll get started. We do want to respect everyone's time, especially for the folks who joined early. And like I said, this is the first time that we're doing a webinar like this, and the first time that we're doing a webinar with Letty and Daria. So we're quite excited for this. So we do want to welcome everyone to our inaugural annual Retail Trends Forecast Report webinar. We do want to let you folks know that we do have additional resources on our resources section in our website. And if you're looking for specific resource types, if you're looking for reports or blog posts, which we actually post at least once a week, and you're in a given industry and you want to be able to filter down the content based on your area of focus, you could do so in a resources section. Lots of really fun stuff. We do have both serious as well as fun analyses that we like to be able to share out. So I do encourage you to check that out. So in terms of our agenda today, we will introduce our speakers right after this slide. After that, for the folks who are not familiar with Quid, we'll give you a brief introduction. And then after that, we'll go into what you've all joined the webinar for today, our forecast report methodology, as well as an inside look into our predictions. And like I mentioned earlier, after the webinar, we will have a section for Q&A, but we also encourage you all to pop your questions in over the course of the webinar in the Q&A widget if you're on Zoom, into the chat if you're on LinkedIn, and we'll try our best to answer those questions over the course of the webinar. All right, so I mentioned their names earlier, but I did want to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. Our speakers for today are Letty Uy, she's a senior outcomes engineer, and Daria Adamir, who's also on the outcomes engineering team. Letty, I'll hand it off to you to introduce yourself.
Hey everyone. Thanks Harvey for the quick intro. Senior outcomes engineer here at Quid. I come with a fashion industry product development background, but now I specialize in all things trends in addition to social listening. So very excited to share our work with you today.
And I'm Daria, outcomes engineer at Quid. I come from both academia background as well as entertainment, and I spend my time analyzing social cultural signals to understand how trends form, scale, translate into real consumer behaviors. So very excited to share that with you today.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Letty and Daria. Um, I don't want to toot both your horns too much, but I like to think that Letty and Daria are two of the smartest people at the company. And so you all are in for a treat during this webinar because I'm sure that their insights are going to be amazing. I actually haven't gone through all of the content with them just yet. So I'm just as excited as you all are to be able to see what they have to share about their findings and their predictions for this year. So for the folks who are not familiar with Quid, just like I said, quick introduction. We've been in the consumer and market intelligence space for more than 20 years. We've worked with a number of different brands across the world with folks in different departments and different roles. And more recently, we've really shifted to partnering with our customers to develop models that are a reflection of their market and their target consumers and really work with them closely to understand what the main data sources are that they need to be able to accomplish what their business outcomes are and to be able to extract the insights and to give them the knowledge that they need to be able to act on and be proactive about some of these trends that they need to be aware of to be able to achieve their outcomes and to be able to get to them faster than their competitors do. And obviously, we all have our own internal data. We have an understanding of how our business works, but ultimately, we also have to factor in, as business leaders, the external forces that may be impacting the way that we do business and what's influencing our customers. And you can see here that there are a number of different components, different factors that you should be taking into account into your strategies, whether it's market trends or different consumer behaviors, or even looking at opportunities for innovation like patent submissions as well as investments. And what Quid does is allows you to be able to aggregate all this information. And not just that, but we leverage our AI, we leverage our models, we leverage our domain experts like Letty and Daria to help you to understand how to quickly act on these and to ensure that you're maintaining your place in the market. And if not, increasing your share and becoming a leader within your space. And the way that we work here at Quid is the way that you work. So we like to think that we're democratizing access to insights through ensuring that the way that you're consuming them is through the same channels that you use on a day-to-day basis. So regardless of where you are from a technical capability, whether you're an executive at your company who isn't too far in the weeds in terms of data and analysis, or whether you're someone who's really deep in the weeds in analyzing and extracting insights from data, we have a solution for you, and we figure out a way to be able to work with you to allow you to access these insights, these recommendations into what to do based on your outcomes, using a lot of the same tools that you leverage on a day-to-day basis. And like I've said, we've worked with a number of folks across different industries globally. We've had the opportunity to be able to share a lot of their stories as well. So going back to what I said about the resources page, if you want to take a look at a lot of our customer stories, we do have them in that space. We've got a ton of testimonials that we encourage you to take a look at. And with that, like I said, it was going to be a really brief intro. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Letty. If you want to go ahead and share your screen and cover our forecast report methodology.
Awesome. Thank you, Harvey, for the overview. So before we get into the trends themselves, want to reiterate here at Quid, we're not just looking at a single platform or a small sample, we're looking at culture as it's forming across search, social, news, basically the whole universe online. Um, so what does that look like in practice? So we're analyzing over 5 billion data points across social, search, and news. We're evaluating over 600 cross-category micro trends. And we're counting over 2 years of ongoing tracking. So with our in-house LLMs, they help us process and organize huge volumes of unstructured data. So posts, comments, captions, conversations that are happening online. So we're going from millions of signals to something usable and actionable. So I'll deep dive a bit about our methodology. So after we capture all of those cross-platform trend signals, we score trends across 5 momentum categories, which I'll dive into in a little bit. So these categories help us understand whether something has real breadth, durability versus just short-term attention. And third, we convert those category scores into something we call the Quid Forward Momentum Score. So we can compare trends consistently and clearly across different focus categories. And then finally, we close the loop with expert-driven business recommendations. We're working on translating that momentum into what it means for different categories, audiences, go-to-market decisions, because what is all this for if not for real actions and real impacts for your business? So it's very important to us, and I'm sure it's very important to you. And then Quid forward momentum score. So you'll see this applied in the trends that we're presenting to you in a little bit, but wanted to briefly explain what this means. So this is a normalized index on a scale of 0 to 100, designed to identify which cultural trends are most likely to accelerate and sustain growth, not just flare up and disappear. We want to go after the trends that we think are going to last a year plus. Um, and most importantly, it's not based on a simple average. We're combining normalized signals across multiple dimensions, as you see on this slide, to capture volume, consistency, breadth, because that tells you whether a trend can scale and persist. So the five dimensions that we are looking at are one, cultural energy. This is how intense and culturally relevant a trend is. So including big catalysts like events, releases, seasonal moments. And next is community adoption. How deeply are people participating online? So looking at niche communities to more broader engagement. And then third, we have platform diversity. So this is looking at whether it's resilient across platforms. So you'll see it on Reddit, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, or is it just confined to one ecosystem? So we're taking a look at that as well. And then next, search durability. This is really important to us. And, we have plans to incorporate Pinterest search in the near future. But right now, looking at Google search, we're assessing whether intent and interest hold over time versus just a short-term spike. And then lastly, we have seasonal signature. So we are looking at whether a trend is episodic, seasonal, expanding beyond traditional peaks across a 2-year look back period. So that's a wide window of time that we're looking at. How does this trend performing against different seasons? And again, our in-house LLMs score each trend across these five dimensions to ultimately result in a quid forward momentum score. So a measure of how likely a trend is going to persist over time. So I know that was a lot of information, but would love to take you under the hood. I'll keep this part quick, but I like showing this slide because it makes the work feel real. On the left, you'll see what the underlying data set looks like, an output of how we structure and track microtrends over time. And on the right, you're seeing a raw scoring view. So this is where our holistic framework gets applied across macro trends so we can normalize and compare them consistently. So in the middle of all this work, it's our in-house LLMs are really powering the work that is being done here.
So, Letty, if you don't mind me interjecting here, we do have a question from the audience. This one's from Arjun, and he asks, going back to the previous slide, how did you decide on the five components of the Quid forward momentum score?
Yeah, happy to explain. So when we were figuring out this methodology and just, looking at trend forecasting in general, we wanted to try to answer, will this trend grow and will it last? And for us, it was really important to come up with a methodology that considered, all areas of impact, not just one or two that most trend forecasting companies typically lean on. We wanted to use our expansive data pool to take all of these different components like search, communities, social activity, news, and just bake that into a methodology that took a look at all of these different dimensions. And luckily, Quid's pool of data and technical expertise allows us to gather all of these different signals. So yeah, shout outs to, our engineers and just the company direction in general.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Letty.
Yep. All right. So inside look at our predictions. So 2026 top retail trends forecast report. So this is what you're all here for. So just taking you through 6 trends that we think are going to persist over time based on the Quid forward momentum scores. We think that consumers are going to be leaning into expressive aesthetics, fueled by major entertainment releases, global sporting moments, revived heritage influences. Social media continues to act as a cultural engine that pulls these niche communities into the mainstream. So it's turning aesthetics that used to feel, a little bit subcultural into more dominant languages. So my colleague Daria and I will take you through these six trends that best represent this mix. So I will start with global sports fever. So this trend is all about sports shifting from just something you watch to something you wear, live, and build identity around. So on this slide, you can see some of the signals that illustrate this shift. So we're looking at things like run clubs, Pilates-driven aesthetics, even, very specific product cues like Puma Speed Cats, which, a really big part of the retro-inspired footwear trend that we've been seeing. So what tells us is this. So sports, it's not just a moment, it's a style language and a lifestyle. So we've been seeing this, really evolve and will continue to evolve in the next year. And looking ahead to 2026, so anticipation for, major global events like the World Cup, Winter Olympics, it's expected to intensify sports cultural influence even further. And of course, it's like, yeah, we know that, but what's interesting here is how quickly that influence moves beyond fandom, so into fashion, entertainment, community identity. These are just two of the key future events that we're seeing drive this trend forward. But we've also been seeing a lot of conversations recently around the upcoming Super Bowl. Shows and movies that come to mind are Heated Rivalry and Marty Supreme. All of these things are seeping into real life. So, think of this as impacting fashion, entertainment, and lifestyle. And now, when we look at the forward momentum score here, this is where the methodology shows up. So the global sports fever trend shows up at 97%. So really high, exceptionally strong cultural energy, broad platform saturation, community scale, high search durability. It's driven by massive global events that create momentum heading into the year. So the takeaway here is this. This isn't just a trend that depends on one platform or one season. It's built on, multiple engines at once, like events, identity, sustained intent. So definitely keep this at the top of your list. Any questions before I head into the next?
No questions over here, Letty.
Okay, awesome. So our next trend, this is a really fun one and one of my favorites, kidulting. So if global sports fever is about collective energy and community identity, kidulting is more about personal joy, the normalization of play, regardless of age. So kidulting describes this broader shift where adults are embracing toys, play, and nostalgia as a meaningful form of self-expression. So over the past year, communities have openly celebrated collecting, gaming, playful rituals, and that social validation is part of what moves it from niche to mainstream behavior. So we've we started tracking Labubus and blind boxes a year before it peaked. So it's been really interesting to see the growth and evolution of this broader trend, which we strongly believe will be stronger this year. So on this slide, you can see some of the signal examples like trading cards, bag charms, retro gaming, blind boxes. So what stands out here is how cross-category it is. Not only does it touch toys, it also influences fashion and even home, which is a big reason we expect it to, stay visible and grow even bigger next year. And looking at the key cultural moments in 2026, you've got major franchise releases and storytelling worlds that blend this nostalgia with modern humor and design. So, and that matters because it's not just activating, longtime fans, it pulls in new audiences too. So these cultural moments help cement kidulting as this enduring behavior. So when looking at key cultural moments coming up this year, the Super Mario Galaxy movie and Toy Story 5, we're already seeing a lot of excitement on social. It proves that no matter what age you are, these familiar IPs can still resonate very deeply and tap into that, nostalgia and just the kid inside. And looking at the forward momentum score, it comes in at 80%. So looking at this, breaking it down, high cultural visibility, broad platform activity, engaged communities are key contributors to its forward momentum. So the takeaway here is this: it's not about, just selling toys to adults. It's about designing for joy, collectability, identity, because, adults are increasingly giving themselves permission to lean into fun. So definitely lean on that and run with it for 2026. And then I'll go into the next trend, goth revival. So this one is about dark, romantic aesthetics moving into the mainstream as online subcultures champion and evolve goth-inspired style. So this slide calls out cultural touchstones like Wednesday and goth-leaning themes in mainstream music as part of what broadens the appeal. So what's powerful here is how social communities remix this aesthetic in real time. So mentions of lace, leather, occult details, moody interiors, dramatic beauty, and then translate it into something that's wearable and livable for everyday life. Like we've most recently seen this trend come up, and it was very interesting to me. It was corporate goth. So it's basically dressing gothic, but more work appropriate. And I thought that was such an interesting evolution of this trend. And then just looking at the micro trends that we've been tracking, goth nails, moody living room, gothic Christmas, which I found interesting and new, and goth makeup. So a lot of interest here for this trend, and even more in coming into the rest of this year. And when looking at key cultural moments in 2026, just pulling, two examples. First, the film Wuthering Heights, which is much anticipated. A lot of early buzz around this, pouring into, this year. It's going to come out next month. But it's not only people talking about the film, it's talking about, the aesthetic, the beauty looks, the outfits, the music. It's a really interesting conversation that people are having around not just, what the movie is going to be about, but just the overall aesthetic, the gothic aesthetic of it. And then another example, is Lady Gaga's Mayhem Ball. So looking at music, this has been extended. It's bound to have ripple effects. And when you think about it, like fashion and beauty, it's going to further boost this trend. If you also watched the Golden Globes recently, so many celebrities came wearing black dresses that have that sort of gothic look. All of these signals just point to the appeal of gothic sensibilities, just far beyond these traditional subcultures that it had originated from. And then just taking a look at the forward momentum radar. So this comes in at a 74%. So solid cultural cues, multi-platform preference, deep community identity for sure, and resilient search activity makes this trend with lasting power. Awesome. So that was Goth Revival. I will hand it to you, Daria, for the rest.
Thank you, Letty. All right, let's move on to the trend number 4. So this is all out glam, and it marks a clear shift away from clean girl aesthetic and hyper minimal aesthetic that we saw over the last few years. And instead, we're seeing a return to bold, expressive glamour. Think dramatic makeup, maximal styling, statement silhouettes, and beauty that's meant to be seen. And what's important here is that it's driven by both nostalgia, like we see here, Bratz. There are some rumors that Kim Kardashian is sponsoring, investing in the new Bratz movie, which is going to overshadow the Barbie aesthetic, as well as it's performance driven because glam is coming back as a form of identity and cultural participation. And from a data standpoint, this shift is already underway. Social conversation around all out glam is up over 130% year over year, with some of the search terms like full glam, Hollywood glam, blowouts being like at its peak. And we're also seeing this driven by high visibility performers like Taylor Swift, Sabrina Carpenter, Chappell Roan, whose styling choices are being tutorialized and commercialized across social. So again, it's spanning across multiple categories like beauty, fashion, even toys, and like through glam rooms, collectible vanity items, some um, looks, outfits, and so on. And as we're talking about trend catalysts and accelerators, obviously there are a lot of cultural moments that are driving it. So in May 2026, if we go to the next slide, we are expecting the Devil Wears Prada 2 arriving as more than a sequel. Because it's positioned as a cultural reset. It was very, very influential back then. So now it's kind of like this sequel gives this modern look, modern lens for a generation that consumes fashion through social celebrity culture. So it's going to be very, very loud. Um, at the same time, the 2026 Met Gala has its costume art theme that elevates fashion into the fine art realm. And it kind of validates this maximalism at the highest cultural level. And overall, these cultural moments reinforce the glam at its full swing. And as we're talking about for momentum score, All Out Glam earns 72%, reflecting the trend is clearly reascending, with search durability being at its peak, as well as cultural energy. We see it's driven by celebrity influence, red carpet visibility, high impact entertainment releases, as well as seasonal signature, because seasonality is a major strength of it. We see it peaking around some award seasons, holidays, social occasions. So this trend makes it um, very popular for campaigns, launches, and retail storytelling. So this is All Out Glam. Now, moving on to the American Renaissance. American Renaissance captures this renewed cultural interest in heritage, craftsmanship, classic Americana, but reinterpreted for a contemporary audience. And we see it across fashion, home, lifestyle. Consumers are gravitating toward some timeless materials, traditional silhouettes. And it's not just ironic or a novelty-driven patriotism. It's a softer, more refined revival of American style, rooted in quality, longevity. Think like denim, tailoring, heritage brands, a lived-in aesthetic that signals this comfort and tradition. And social conversation in late 2025, especially around moments like Ralph Lauren Christmas, revealed how deeply this sensibility really resonates with audience. As for some of the momentum, cultural moments. The biggest driver here is 250th anniversary of American independence. Obviously, it's not a single day event. It's a year-long cultural moment that culminates on July 4th, 2026, and we expect sustained storytelling around heritage, national identity across media, retail, brand narratives, etc. As well as at the same time, some of the releases like Ryan Murphy's American Love Story romanticizes late 20th century Americana, blending this fashion and kind of like celebrity gossip and nostalgia. So a very prominent Americana influence here as well. And as we're talking about for momentum score, it earns 72%. Also very different from, for different reasons from All Out Glam. We see very prominent community adoption as consumers engage through fashion, home, lifestyle choices that signal values, as well as high cultural energy, seasonal signature, because as we mentioned, it's not just a one-day event, it's going to span over the whole year, maybe even longer. So great opportunity here for this like long horizon, history-driven trend. Less about fast cycles, more about lasting relevance. So this is American Renaissance. And finally, very whimsical trend. My favorite one is everyday whimsy. Whimsy or whimsical is an aesthetic of magic. So everyday whimsy is all about the return of joy, playfulness, imagination in daily life. People are highlighting it in their everyday routines. They're trying to find joy in everyday actions that they're doing. So consumers spend more time navigating stress, uncertainty, digital fatigue, and we're seeing growing desire for this lightness, kind of like expressed through some of the charming details, playful motives, decor, storybook-inspired aesthetics. And this trend doesn't require full transformation. Instead, it just shows in very small and expressive ways, like accessories, joyful color pairings, different decor touches, beauty looks, outfits. So all it's all about attention to details. And what's notable is that it's no longer confined to niche subcultures. If we look at some of the catalysts that we expect to see in late 2026, Disney is introducing Hexed, their new movie, very playful, magical world that aligns directly with whimsical aesthetic. As well as in parallel, we continue to see the rise of romantasy, particularly across book talks and bookstagram that feels very steady, story-driven aesthetic, as well as drive some of the outfit inspirations, consumer mood boards, makeup looks, etc. And obviously, there are also a lot of new TV show releases, some of the new seasons like House of Dragon, season 3, or there will be Harry Potter's 25th anniversary, which also gonna fuel this excitement. As for momentum score, Everyday Whimsy earns 72%, which reflects very consistent cross-category appeal. And we see high seasonal signature as well as community adoption because community participation is very strong. As I said, it's moving away from being just very niche, very uh, kind of like the subculture driven to more broader one that is reflected by constant references on social. And as for seasonal signature signal, it peaks during gifting season, some home refresh cycles, moments of self-expression that is fueling this retail storytelling and merchandising. So overall, the score highlights that everyday whimsy is a very mood-driven trend that quietly embeds itself into multiple areas of consumer life, which is a very great trend to action on if you plan to. So these are all of our trends. So you might ask, okay, I know these trends, I what can I do about it? They're so broad. They cover so many areas of retail as well as marketing, merchandising, beauty, fashion, home, toys. So at Quid, we believe that trend insights only matter if they can be activated across the full business pipeline. And what it makes these trends powerful is that they're grounded in how consumers already behave on social. So that means that teams don't need to invent new narratives. They can just align with existing cultural language. So from a marketing perspective, this means shaping campaigns around the way people already express these aesthetics, bold, theatrical beauty for glam, or nostalgic, heritage-driven storytelling for Americana, or playful cues for whimsy. For merchandising and the product standpoint, it's all about curating assortment that reflects the details consumers respond to most, like dramatic silhouettes, some of the gothic materials and colors, heritage fabrics, athletic trims, joyful accents, and some unexpected color combinations. So it's all driven by this visual curation. And as for product development, in-store on-site experience can be refreshed around cultural moments, whether it's sport events, national milestones, gifting seasons. So environment feels very cultural current, not static. And finally, some creator partnerships become effective when brands collaborate with people who naturally live within these aesthetics. Because we mentioned that a lot of them are coming from niche subcultures. So if you're partnering with authentic creators, it's going to bring authenticity to your brand as well. And this is how trend intelligence moves beyond just inspiration, becomes decision-making tool, helps creating this cultural alignment that we at Quid really value and we constantly work with. Um, just to wrap it up, what makes this forecast different is grounded in real consumer behavior, and it is grounded across different platforms, forward-looking lens, and that's how we help teams move from dashboards to decisions, being grounded in our LM capabilities, as well as some of the uh, genuine interest in what we're doing, me and Letty and all the other people at Quid. So we're happy to open the floor for any questions you have, any comments you have, or you can reach out to us later after the webinar.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Daria. Yeah, we'll jump right into the questions, but amazing job on the report to you and to Letty. Just really insightful. The content itself and your insights into and your commentary into the predictions were also very interesting. Like clearly, I need to adopt maybe the corporate goth aesthetic. I could lean into my early college days and my look back then. It also does seem like there's quite a bit of sort of retro romanticism where people are looking into things that appealed to them that they enjoyed when they were younger, or even, from a broader cultural aspect, like the Americana prediction. I think it's really interesting how a lot of folks are kind of looking to the past, whether it's personal or cultural, and how this is working its way into trends that'll be relevant for all of us in 2026. So, Daria, since you're still on camera, I'll hand off the first question to you, and you can hand this off to Letty as well when you're done responding. But this one's from Elena. Her question is, was there anything that surprised you about the results of the analysis?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think one of the biggest surprises was how clearly consumers are moving away from kind of like restrained across multiple categories at the same time. So as we expected to see some return to maximalism in fashion and beauty, but what stood out is how consistently that shows up along nostalgia, heritage, playful expression, as Harvey mentioned. So it's not isolated aesthetic. It's a broader emotional shift that we're seeing. And this is how we identified it as trends and why some of the trends were kind of like left out. And these kind of made it to the final six because of how strong they were and how sustained search behavior was for trends tied to like nostalgia, playfulness, comfort, and familiarity. Letty, any comments from you?
Yeah, that was a great answer. And I'd like to add that, what surprised me about the analysis and what continues to surprise me is just how much communities really bring to the forefront. Like a lot of people, you know, our third space is basically the internet now. And a lot of communities are born in this age where, a lot of interest in particular things or like subcultures, aesthetics really drive, momentum and leads it to become, more persistent in, everyday life. Like a wider audience begins to adopt something that a smaller community had once, like is just living on Reddit or just living on TikTok. So it's really interesting to see that. And it always continues to surprise me, like what new communities are born and, also interesting to see like what matters to them. It's all about listening to the conversation and extracting insights that way.
Yeah. I'm going to jump into the second question here, somewhat related. This one's from Sloan, and I'll hand this one off to you, Letty. Are there any other trends that didn't make the cut that are worth keeping an eye on? I think we got a little bit of a peek at them when you were showing us some of the works under the hood there. But yeah, what are some of the others that were top of mind for you that didn't make the cut?
Yeah, definitely. There were so many. One example was analog escape. So funny that you mentioned, the overall theme of nostalgia and people looking to the past. Like there was a rise in analog activities, and hobbies like sewing, knitting, collaging that are, coming in strong for 2026. And it was like driven by a lot of it was the conversation around grandma hobbies that Taylor Swift kind of kickstarted. So that one was a really interesting one. If we have included all the interesting ones in this document, I feel like it would be hundreds of pages long. Um, and then another one is also rooted in nostalgia, which we were calling neo nostalgia. So it's like specifically retro inspired, vintage inspired details, in more modern contexts. So like we saw that play out in like kitchen appliances, or like the return of brooches in fashion. So like mixing old with new is like another trend that almost made the cut. But yeah, there were so many, and yeah, we're all keeping an eye on it, seeing how it evolves. So yeah.
Dario, what about you?
Yeah, I remember the one Optimaxing. Now the whole culture is out maxing your whatever like aesthetic. So this one was specifically about maxing different aspects of life, especially like beauty, wellness, fitness, self-improvement. Um, and what was interesting about it that it was which would show up in like routines and product stacking, like different beauty routine stacking, performance oriented tools like, red light mask therapy. So everything about being like very, very effective, very targeted, which we appreciate for beauty and skincare. So that one was also an interesting one.
Is follow-up question for that because this is the first time I've heard of it. Is optimaxing a portmanteau of optimizing and maximalism or something along those lines?
Yeah, yeah. Maxing is basically like taking it to like highest level,
Yeah.
optimizing whatever you taking to the maximum level. So it's like easier for you, doesn't create a burden. So you have to like put like multiple devices on yourself or like
Yeah, that's really
things.
interesting because so the counterintuitive or idiosyncratic, those two words together. But let me jump into the next question here. I want to make sure that we have time to answer all of them. This one's from Matthew. How much of this is manual versus automated or through agents? So, Darius, since you spoke last, I'll let you take the lead with this one.
Yeah, it's definitely hybrid, and that's very intentional. So at the foundation, as Letty was explaining, this work is highly automated. We're analyzing billions of data points across social, search, news, scoring trends systematically across different categories. And where the human layer comes is interpretation, synthesis, application. So as we're talking to you, you're asking like, which ones made it? Which one didn't make it? Obviously, we were looking at some forward momentum scores. At the same time, we were using our kind of like the judgment of what we see on social, our analyst curiosity to see if this one is gonna be major trend or just like flash in the pan. Um, and we also increasingly leveraging agents more and more to accelerate discovery, some pattern detection. Again, our engineering team works really, really hard on that, and we're integrating it in um, different briefs that we're creating for our customers. So it's all about combining these automations and agents while the clarity and judgment comes from expert oversight.
Letty, anything that you wanted to add to that before we jump to the next question?
I feel like she covered that perfectly. So nothing to add on
All
my end.
right. We'll go to the next question then. This one's from May. Do you have any examples of being able to apply? I think this is probably one that we could have answered a little bit earlier when you were going through your methodology slide. But do you have any examples of being able to apply this methodology to existing customers?
Yeah, great question. So this is the beauty of the methodology that we are working with. Um, it's so the methodology that we're working with is applicable across different industries, different use cases. Looking at, the things like search and communities, that's very applicable to, not just retail, but, like let's say food, or another industry. So yeah, um, this is really applicable to all sorts of areas. Not sure if you want to add anything there, Daria.
No, I think you covered everything.
And I also want to add, the momentum scoring, helps customers prioritize instead of, just reacting to everything that's happening because you get so many signals. There's so much noise out there, especially with social data. Everything looks trendy, right? So the methodology really helps customers that we work with currently focus on the signals that are actually building and aligning with their strategies accordingly. So great, great tool to prioritize and just shape, your next steps.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point as well. And like I alluded to with that slide where we were taking a peek under the hood and we are taking a look at some of the other trends that didn't make the cut. There are a ton of different signals, right? And for many of the folks who may be on this webinar and folks that we're talking to every single day, time and resources are always very limited, right? And so prioritization is incredibly important to ensure that you're allocating resources, putting time and money towards the things that'll matter the most and make the most impact to your business. So I do think that's a really great point. There are so many signals for us to have to interpret and to sift through and to be able to identify where the actual signal is in the noise, since there's so much of it. That we now have access to. There's so much access to data, so much for us to potentially analyze and interpret that we really need to ensure that we're being efficient with our time or optimaxing, recalling one of the terms from earlier. We're about a minute over time, and then actually, as a result of that last question, I think we actually answered one of the other ones about the different industries that we could potentially cover with this methodology. But for the folks who are still on, we do want to thank you all again for joining us on this webinar. We do encourage you, like I said at the beginning, take a look at our resources section. We've got more there. We have more events that we're planning on lining up, so keep an eye on our events page. And also, we hinted at this being the tip of the iceberg. If you want to learn more, even if it's to take a look at what the rest of that list looks like and what may be relevant to you in terms of trends that are going to be emerging in 2026, please reach out to us if you're not already a Quid customer, or even if you are a Quid customer, speak to your account manager. They're more than happy to walk you through what could be relevant for you and ensuring that you are continuing to identify different opportunities that'll be relevant for your business. So, with that said, we'd like to thank you all again. We'd like to thank Daria and Letty for taking time out of their very busy days to spend and to be able to share their insights with us. And we hope to see you all again soon. Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.